He thought he could cheat on his pregnant wife with whoever he wanted, until he chose her best friend. But when the FBI knocked on the door, panic spread across his face. The autumn rain tapped gently against the bay windows of the Victorian home, perched on the cliffs of Meriton, Oregon. Inside, Thad Sinclair stood behind his wife, his hands resting on her shoulders as they gazed at the ultrasound image pinned to the antique corkboard in their kitchen. 6 more weeks, Thad whispered, his breath warm against Vivienne's ear. 6 more weeks until our whole world changes. Vivienne, Viv Montgomery Sinclair, pressed her hand against her swollen belly, feeling the rhythmic movements of their son inside her. After 8 years together, 5 of them married and 2 painful years of trying, this miracle still felt surreal. "I never thought we'd get here," she said, turning in his arms. At 33, Viv's copper hair cascaded in waves around her heart-shaped face, framing eyes the color of aged whiskey. Those eyes had always been able to see right through him. "Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and discover this was all a dream." Thad's green eyes crinkled with his smile. At 35, his perpetually disheveled brown hair and tech guy casual style belied the sharp intellect that had propelled him from struggling freelancer to senior cybersecurity analyst for a cutting-edge Seattle firm. Though he worked remotely from their home office, his reputation in the industry had grown formidable. "This is real," he assured her, placing his hand next to hers. "And it's just the beginning." The perfect picture of domestic bliss was interrupted by the chime of the doorbell. Viv's face lit up. "That must be Laurel with the nursery samples." She moved with surprising grace toward the front door, her hands instinctively cradling her belly. Laurel Reed swept in like a cool breeze, bringing with her the scent of expensive perfume and the energy of a Manhattan boardroom, despite being in coastal Oregon. Tall, blonde, and striking, she moved with deliberate precision. Her ice-blue eyes surveyed the room before settling warmly on Viv. "The pregnant goddess herself," Laurel exclaimed, embracing Viv carefully before holding her at arm's length. "You're absolutely glowing. It's disgusting how beautiful you are right now." "Liar," Viv laughed. "I'm a whale. A very literary whale," Thad added, earning him a playful glare from his wife. "And the father-to-be," Laurel said, giving Thad a quick hug that lingered just a second too long. "How's the digital fortress these days? Still keeping America's secret safe?" There was something in the way she said it, something in the brush of her fingers against his arm as she pulled away, that sent an imperceptible current between them. So subtle that Viv, busy with the fabric samples Laurel had brought, didn't notice. "Something like that," Thad replied, stepping back. "Though lately, I've been more focused on baby-proofing our home network. Did you know there are hackers targeting baby monitors now? Our resident paranoid," Viv said affectionately. "Next thing you know, he'll be setting up firewalls for the baby's stuffed animals." "Mock all you want," Thad said, moving toward the kitchen. "But when our son's teddy bear isn't selling state secrets to the Russians, you'll thank me." "Coffee, Laurel?" "Please," Laurel replied, following Viv to the living room sofa. "Black, like my soul." As the women chatted enthusiastically about color schemes and furniture, Thad observed them from the kitchen. They'd been inseparable since college, Viv, the introspective literature major who found reality in fiction, and Laurel, the ambitious communications student who'd transformed herself into one of Oregon's top real estate agents through sheer force of will. Their friendship had always mystified him. They seemed to have nothing in common except a fierce loyalty to each other. Or so he'd thought. 3 weeks later, Thad sat in his dimly lit home office, staring at his monitor. The house was quiet. Viv was at a late department meeting at the high school where she taught American literature. His phone vibrated with an incoming text. "I'll be there in 10. Door unlocked?" He hesitated before typing back. "Yes. Viv's at school until 8. Laurel arrived in 7 minutes. She didn't knock. "Working late?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe of his office. Thad quickly closed several windows on his computer. "Just wrapping up." "Good," Laurel said, crossing the room with measured steps. "Because I've been thinking about you all day." The first time had been an accident, if such things can ever truly be accidental. A month ago, Viv had gone to a teachers' conference in Portland. Laurel had stopped by with takeout, concerned about Thad wasting away during his wife's absence. One bottle of wine had led to another, and conversations about his fears of fatherhood had somehow transformed into whispered confessions of attraction. Now, as Laurel's cool fingers traced the nape of his neck, Thad felt the familiar mixture of desire and self-loathing rise within him. "We need to stop this," he said, even as he turned toward her. "Viv is due in 6 weeks." "Then we have 6 weeks," Laurel replied, her voice dropping to that register that made rational thought nearly impossible for him. "Unless you want me to leave?" He didn't ask her to leave. 40 miles away in Portland, FBI Special Agent Dominic Hayes pinned another document to the sprawling investigation board. At 48, Hayes had the wiry build of a distance runner and the penetrating gaze of a man who'd spent decades reading between lies. His salt and pepper hair was cropped military short, and the sleeves of his white shirt were rolled up to the elbows, revealing forearms mapped with old scars. "Talk to me about Thaddeus Sinclair," he said to the room of analysts. A young agent stepped forward. 35, works remotely for Cyber Shield in Seattle, specializes in encryption and protective architecture for government contractors. No criminal record, excellent performance reviews. Married to a high school teacher, baby on the way, and he just happens to have the exact security clearance and access points that were compromised in the Pentagon breach, Hayes noted, tapping a file folder. His digital fingerprints are all over this, but it doesn't make sense. His background is clean, his finances are stable, and he's got no obvious motive. Could be ideology, another agent suggested. Hayes shook his head. Nothing in his history suggests radical leanings of any kind. This guy posts cat memes and baby prep articles on social media. Either he's the best deep cover operative I've ever seen, or he's being used, the younger agent finished. "Find out who's in his orbit," Hayes ordered. "Everyone he talks to, works with, gets coffee from. Someone is pulling this guy's strings, and I want to know who." Back in Meriton, rain lashed against the windows as Viv pulled into the driveway. The lit windows of her home glowed invitingly against the darkening sky. She'd left school early. The department meeting had been cancelled after a pipe burst in the administrative wing. She hadn't bothered texting Thad. She wanted to surprise him with the takeout from their favorite Thai place. As she stepped inside, she noticed 2 things immediately: Laurel's cream-colored BMW parked on the street, and the unusual quiet in the house. "Thad," she called out, setting the food on the entry table. "Laurel?" Something felt wrong. The quality of the silence was heavy, expectant. She moved through the house toward Thad's office, where a thin line of light spilled from beneath the door. She heard muffled voices, then a feminine laugh that she instantly recognized as Laurel's, a sound she'd heard countless times over 15 years of friendship. Her hand hesitated on the doorknob. Some primal instinct told her not to open it, that what waited on the other side would irrevocably destroy something precious. But another part, the part that had always needed to know the truth, however painful, pushed forward. The door swung open soundlessly. Thad stood with his back to her, his shirt unbuttoned. Laurel's arms were wrapped around his waist, her head tilted up to his. They broke apart instantly when they realized they weren't alone, but it was too late. Viv's world compressed to a single point of devastating clarity. Every suspicious glance she'd dismissed, every late night she'd accepted without question, every touch between them she'd rationalized. All of it crystallized into a single, undeniable truth. "Viv," Thad's voice cracked. "This isn't—" "Don't," she whispered, her hand instinctively moving to protect her belly. "Don't you dare say this isn't what it looks like." Laurel stepped forward, her face a mask of practiced contrition. "Vivienne, please let us explain." "Explain?" Viv's voice rose sharply. "Explain what exactly? How long you've been sleeping with my husband? How many times you've sat in my home planning my baby's nursery, all while betraying me in the most fundamental way possible? Or maybe explain how you've managed to look me in the eyes for— How long has this been going on?" The silence that followed was answer enough. "Viv, please." Thad moved toward her, his face ashen. "We need to talk about this." "Talk?" She laughed, a hollow sound devoid of humor. "I teach literature, Thad. I've read enough to know that when the pregnant wife discovers her husband and her best friend together, there's nothing left to say." She turned and walked out, ignoring their calls. The rain soaked through her clothes as she made it to her car, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the keys. Somehow she managed to drive away from the house, away from the 2 people she'd trusted most in the world. She made it 3 blocks before pulling over, the sobs finally breaking free. She cried until her throat was raw, until her eyes burned, until the baby inside her kicked forcefully as if in solidarity with her pain. Her phone buzzed incessantly, calls from Thad, then Laurel, then Thad again. She silenced it and instead called her older sister in the neighboring town. 20 minutes later, she was pulling into Jennifer's driveway, ready to begin the process of rebuilding her shattered life. The following morning, as Viv lay sleepless in her sister's guest room, Thad paced in their kitchen, his 10th unanswered call to Viv ending in voicemail. When the doorbell rang, he lunged for it, hoping against hope it was his wife. Instead, he found 4 stern-faced individuals on his porch, badges extended. Thaddeus Sinclair, the oldest among them, asked, "I'm Special Agent Dominic Hayes with the FBI. We have a warrant to search these premises in connection with a federal cybersecurity investigation." Thad stood frozen as they filed past him into the house. "There must be some mistake," he stammered. "I haven't done anything." "That remains to be seen, Mr. Sinclair," Hayes replied, studying him with unnerving intensity. "In the meantime, I suggest you make yourself comfortable. We're going to be here a while." As agents began methodically examining his home office, confiscating his devices and files, Thad sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. 24 hours ago, his greatest concern had been whether they should paint the nursery sky blue or navy. Now his wife was gone, his home was being ransacked by federal agents, and the life he'd built was crumbling around him. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent his career building digital walls to protect valuable information, yet he'd failed to safeguard what truly mattered. His phone buzzed with a text. "Laurel, they're at my place too. Don't say anything. I'll fix this." As he stared at the message, a terrible suspicion began to form in his mind, one even more devastating than the wreckage of his marriage. What if his betrayal of Viv was just the beginning of a much larger, more dangerous game? Jennifer's guest bedroom became Viv's sanctuary and prison. The pale blue walls reminded her of the nursery color she'd chosen, a choice now tainted by betrayal. She sat by the window, watching rain streak down the glass, her hand absently rubbing her swollen belly as her nephew's abandoned toys lay scattered across the yard. "You need to eat something," Jennifer said, setting a bowl of soup on the nightstand. At 38, Jennifer had navigated her own divorce 3 years earlier. "The baby needs you strong." "The baby," Viv whispered. "God, Jen, how am I supposed to do this alone?" Jennifer sat beside her sister. "You're not alone. You have me, Mom and Dad. As for Thad, don't say his name," Viv cut in. "I can't. I just can't right now." Her phone lit up again, the 20th call from Thad since yesterday. This time, instead of ignoring it, Viv picked up. "Stop calling me," she said, her voice flat. "Viv, please listen." Thad's voice sounded desperate. "Something's happening. The FBI is investigating me for some kind of security breach at work. They've taken my computers, files, everything. And this concerns me how?" The coldness in her voice was foreign even to her own ears. "I think Laurel might be involved. The timing is too perfect. The FBI showed up right after you left and now I can't reach her. Her texts are strange, like she's following a script." "Stop," Viv interrupted. "You really expect me to believe that the woman you've been sleeping with behind my back is some kind of spy? That's pathetic, Thad, even for you." The silence on the other end stretched painfully. "I know you hate me right now," he finally said. "You should, but please be careful around Laurel. Something isn't right." Viv ended the call without responding. Outside, rain turned to hail, pelting the windows with tiny bullets of ice. The storm in her heart raged stronger. Thad sat across from Agent Hayes in his own living room, feeling like a stranger in his home. Agents continued methodically combing through his belongings, bagging evidence, photographing documents. "Walk me through your relationship with Cyber Shield again," Hayes said, his pen hovering over a notepad. "I've been with them 4 years. I work on security architecture for government contractors, mostly designing encrypted communication channels and testing for vulnerabilities." "And the Cerberus protocol? That's something you had access to?" Thad stiffened. Cerberus was classified, a new encryption standard being developed for military communications. "That's beyond my clearance level. I know it exists, but I don't have access to the source code." "Yet someone using your credentials accessed it 3 times in the past month," Hayes said, sliding a printout across the coffee table. "Each access traced back to your home IP address." "That's impossible," Thad protested. "I never—" He stopped, a terrible thought forming. "Unless someone accessed my computer without my knowledge." Hayes leaned forward. "Mr. Sinclair, we know you're not working alone. Your finances don't show any unusual deposits. Your travel history is consistent with your claims. You don't fit the profile of someone selling secrets. His eyes narrowed. But someone close to you might. Laurel, Thad whispered, the pieces falling into place. Laurel Reed, Hayes confirmed. Or should I say Elise Kovach? The name hit Thad like a physical blow. What? Hayes produced a file folder with surveillance photos. Elise Kovach, age 34, born in Hungary, educated in London. Suspected operative for an international corporate espionage network called Chimera. They steal intellectual property and classified technology to sell to the highest bidder. Thad flipped through the photos in stunned silence. Laurel, Elise, meeting with unknown men in hotel lobbies, airports, cafes. Same face, different hair, different style. A chameleon. She's been in Meriton for 5 years, Hayes continued. Established as a successful real estate agent. Perfect cover. Allows her to move around, meet people, access properties. We believe she targeted you specifically when you received higher security clearance last year. The timeline aligned perfectly with when Laurel had suddenly shown renewed interest in his work, asking casual questions that now seemed calculated. And their affair, it had begun just weeks after his promotion. I've been such a fool, Thad murmured, the full weight of his naivety crushing him. You're not the first, Hayes said without sympathy. She's very good at what she does. Does she know you're onto her? Not yet. We've been tracking her for 8 months, but couldn't confirm her identity until recently. Your security breach gave us the opening we needed. Thad's phone buzzed with a text from Laurel. We need to talk. Meet me at Cliffside Park in an hour. Come alone. He showed it to Hayes, whose expression remained impassive. What do I do? You help us catch her, Hayes replied. Unless you prefer federal prison. Viv lay on the examination table as her obstetrician moved the ultrasound wand across her belly. Blood pressures still elevated, Dr. Patel noted with concern. The baby looks healthy, but I'm worried about you, Vivian. Stress at this stage isn't good for either of you. Viv stared at the ceiling, fighting tears. I found my husband with my best friend yesterday. Then he called claiming the FBI is investigating him and that she might be some kind of spy, so yes, I'm a little stressed. Dr. Patel's hands stilled. I'm so sorry. Have you considered speaking with someone? A therapist? What I need is a divorce attorney, Viv replied, wiping her eyes, and a time machine. As she left the clinic, Viv noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Something about it triggered her literary professor's pattern recognition. The same car had been outside Jennifer's house that morning. Her phone rang, an unknown number. Mrs. Sinclair, this is Agent Carla Rodriguez with the FBI. I'd like to speak with you about your husband and Laurel Reed. It's important. Cliffside Park hugged the Oregon coastline, offering panoramic views of the churning Pacific. Under different circumstances, Thad might have appreciated the dramatic backdrop of storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Today he barely noticed, his body wired with anxiety and the weight of the recording device taped to his chest. Hayes and his team monitored from unmarked vehicles nearby. Their instructions had been clear. Get Laurel to talk about the security breach, her real identity, her handlers. Wear her down until she revealed something actionable. Thad spotted her on a bench overlooking the ocean, her blonde hair whipping in the wind. She wore oversized sunglasses despite the overcast day, and her posture was rigid, nothing like the languid sensuality she typically projected. You came, she said as he approached. Are you being followed? No, he lied, sitting beside her but maintaining distance. What's going on, Laurel? The FBI ransacked my house yesterday. They're saying someone used my credentials to access classified materials. She removed her sunglasses, and Thad was struck by the clinical coldness in her eyes, so different from the warmth he thought he knew. They have nothing concrete, she said. If they did, you'd be in custody. Listen carefully. You need to leave town. Tonight. I have resources, new identities prepared. We can disappear. We. Thad feigned confusion. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Thaddeus. It doesn't suit you. Her accent had shifted slightly, barely perceptible but definitely different. I chose you for a reason. You're brilliant, adaptable. We work well together. You chose me, he repeated, the confirmation of Hayes's claims landing like a blow. None of it was real, was it? Us, the affair, your friendship with Viv. Some things were real, she said, reaching for his hand. He pulled away. My attraction to you wasn't fabricated. Neither was my affection for Vivian, in its way. But we need to be practical now. The people I work for are powerful. They can protect us both. The people you work for, Thad echoed. And who exactly is that, Laurel? Or should I call you Elise? Her expression flickered. Surprise, quickly masked. Who told you that name? Does it matter? What matters is you used me. You destroyed my marriage, my life for what? Money? Secrets? She leaned closer, dropping her voice. For freedom. The information age has created new empires, Thad. The people who control information control the world. I'm offering you a chance to be on the winning side. By betraying my country? By transcending artificial boundaries. Her eyes gleamed with conviction. Nations are becoming obsolete. The real power lies with those who understand that information should flow freely, or at least flow to those who appreciate its true value. Thad forced himself to hold her gaze, to not recoil from the zealotry he saw there. What exactly did you take using my credentials? The Cerberus protocol is just the beginning. Quantum encryption frameworks, artificial intelligence learning models for defense systems, the kind of technology that will define the next century. My employers are willing to pay 7 figures for your continued cooperation. And if I refuse, her smile could have frozen the ocean beneath them. Then you'll face federal charges while I disappear. Who do you think they'll believe? The disgraced husband with access to classified information, or the local real estate agent who happened to make a poor romantic choice? Thad stood, unable to maintain the charade any longer. I need time to think. You have 12 hours, she replied, replacing her sunglasses. I'll contact you with details tonight. Don't try to run, don't try to be clever. My associates are watching you. As Thad walked away, he heard her call after him. One more thing. Stay away from Vivian. She's not part of this world. If you care about her at all, don't drag her into this mess. The irony of her concern for Viv after their betrayal wasn't lost on him. Back in the FBI surveillance van, Hayes replayed the recording, satisfaction evident in his terse nod. We've got her. Admission of identity, specific mention of stolen technologies, reference to employers. It's enough for an arrest, but I want her network. We need to let this play out. She mentioned associates watching him, another agent noted. If that's true, they've already made us. Then we need to move quickly, Hayes decided. Sinclair, you did well. Now comes the hard part. You need to convince her you're on board with her plan. Thad ran his hands through his hair, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. What about Viv? Laurel specifically mentioned staying away from her. I'm worried she might be in danger. We've got an agent with her now, Hayes assured him. Your wife is safe. Ex-wife, most likely, Thad corrected bitterly. One crisis at a time, Mr. Sinclair. First, let's keep you out of prison and catch an international spy. Then you can work on your marriage. In a quiet cafe in the neighboring town, Viv sat across from Agent Rodriguez, a compact woman with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. We believe Laurel Reed targeted your husband specifically because of his security clearance, Rodriguez explained, and that she manipulated both of you to gain access to his work and home. By sleeping with my husband, Viv clarified, her tone acid. By exploiting vulnerabilities, Rodriguez corrected gently. These operatives are trained psychologists. They identify pressure points and leverage them. Your husband's anxieties about fatherhood, your focus on your pregnancy, the trust you both placed in a long-term friend, these were all tools for her. That doesn't excuse his actions. No, it doesn't, Rodriguez agreed, but it might contextualize them. Right now our priority is catching Ms. Reed and her network before classified technology falls into dangerous hands. Your husband is helping us do that. He's always been weak, Viv said, staring into her untouched tea. Easily manipulated by flattery and attention. I just never thought... She stopped, swallowing hard. What do you need from me? Distance for now. We need Ms. Reed to believe she's isolated your husband, that he has no support system to turn to. It makes him a more likely recruit for her. Viv laughed humorlessly. That shouldn't be difficult to believe. Rodriguez hesitated before continuing. There's something else you should know. We have reason to believe Ms. Reed may have been monitoring your home, possibly with surveillance devices. The implication hit Viv like a physical blow. In my home? In our bedroom? Nausea rose in her throat. For how long? We're still sweeping the property, but this level of operation is sophisticated. They leave nothing to chance. Viv thought of her most intimate moments, not just with Thad, but her private tears over failed pregnancy tests, her quiet celebrations when this pregnancy finally took hold, her vulnerable confessions to Laurel about her fears and insecurities, all potentially observed, recorded, analyzed for weaknesses. "She was going to be our baby's godmother," Viv whispered, hand protectively covering her belly. "I trusted her with everything." Rodriguez nodded sympathetically. "Which is why we need your help. Ms. Reed believes she's winning. We need to keep her thinking that while we close the net around her network." Viv straightened, a new resolve hardening her features. "Tell me what I need to do." That evening, Thad paced his empty house, jumping at every sound. The FBI had removed their most obvious surveillance, but left subtle monitoring equipment. He was simultaneously alone and constantly watched. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Driftwood Motel, Room 8. 1 hour, come alone, last chance." He replied as instructed. "I'm in. No other options left anyway." Within minutes, Hayes called. "Remember, your only job is to get her to reveal her contacts and the handoff protocol for the stolen data. Don't try to be a hero." "Trust me, I'm no hero," Thad replied bitterly. "Just a fool being used by everyone around him." After ending the call, Thad moved to his desk and unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside was a small velvet box containing the diamond earrings he'd planned to give Viv for their anniversary next month. Instead, he removed the false bottom of the drawer and took out a small flash drive. Insurance, he thought, pocketing it, just in case the FBI's protection wasn't as comprehensive as Hayes promised. As he left the house, Thad felt the weight of his decisions crushing him. He'd betrayed the only woman he truly loved for a phantom, a professional liar who had targeted him like a predator, selecting wounded prey. Now his freedom, his future, and possibly his life depended on outmaneuvering someone trained in deception. The Driftwood Motel appeared through the fog like something from a noir film. Neon sign flickering, paint peeling, the perfect setting for the final act of his personal tragedy. As he parked, Thad noticed a dark sedan at the far end of the lot. FBI, he assumed, though it offered little comfort. Room 8 waited at the end of the corridor, light seeping from beneath the door. Thad took a deep breath, remembering Hayes's final advice. "She'll be desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. Push her to make one." He knocked twice and waited, heart hammering against the recording device concealed on his chest. The door opened to reveal Laurel, Elise, looking nothing like either the friend or lover he'd known. Her blonde hair was now dark brown, cut in a severe bob. Her makeup was minimal, her clothing practical rather than seductive. The transformation was jarring. "You're late," she said, pulling him inside and immediately checking him for surveillance devices. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, missing the FBI's sophisticated bugs, but lingering in places that once would have stirred desire in him. Now he felt only revulsion. "I had to make sure I wasn't followed," he replied, forcing himself to meet her gaze. "I'm risking everything coming here." She stepped back, apparently satisfied. "Have you made your decision? Do I have a choice? The FBI has enough to put me away for decades, you've seen to that." The accusation hit its mark. Something like regret flickered across her features. "It wasn't personal, Thad, wasn't it? You befriended my wife for years. You slept with me. You were going to be our child's godmother. That feels pretty damn personal." "The mission always comes first," she said, but her conviction sounded hollow. "Are you wearing a wire?" "No," he lied, "but I brought insurance." He pulled out the flash drive. "A copy of everything I could access on Cerberus. Prove to me your employers can really protect us and it's yours." Her eyes locked on the drive, hunger evident. "This changes everything. With this, we can leave tonight." "Not so fast," Thad countered. "I need details. Who exactly are we running to, where, and how do I know they won't dispose of me once they have what they want?" She hesitated, calculation visible in her eyes. "You don't trust me. Would you, in my position?" A sad smile touched her lips. "No, but trust isn't a luxury in our world." She moved to the desk and opened a laptop. "My primary contact is a man called Alexander Voss, German national, former intelligence, now private contractor for a consortium of technology interests. He's arranged new identities, accounts in Zurich, a property in Argentina until things cool down, and the handoff protocol for the Cerberus data. Digital dead drop," she explained, typing rapidly. "Encrypted upload to servers in Singapore, bounced through proxies. Untraceable." Thad moved closer, watching as she pulled up communications with her handler. Names, dates, locations. Everything Hayes needed to dismantle the network. And Vivian? He asked quietly. What happens to her? Elise's fingers stilled on the keyboard. She'll be fine. She'll have the house, a settlement from your frozen assets. She's strong, she'll recover. You sound like you care. I do, she admitted, surprising him with what seemed like genuine emotion. Vivian was never supposed to be hurt. She was my friend, Thad. That part wasn't a lie. Yet you slept with her husband. Her eyes hardened. The mission always comes first, he finished. So you keep saying. Tell me something, Elise. Was any of it real? Any of it at all? The use of her real name cracked her professional facade. For a moment, vulnerability showed through. Some of it, more than there should have been. It was the opening Hayes had instructed him to look for. Thad pressed harder. Which parts? When you helped Viv plan our baby shower? When you told me you were falling for me? I need to know what was real before I leave everything behind. She stepped closer, her hand reaching for his face. A gesture once familiar, now foreign. This isn't productive, we need to... The motel room door burst open. Armed agents flooded in, shouting commands. Elise reacted with trained precision, reaching for something in her jacket, but was quickly subdued. As agents secured her, Hayes entered calmly. Elise Kovacs, you're under arrest for espionage against the United States, identity fraud, and conspiracy to commit treason. As they led her away, she locked eyes with Thad one final time. In that gaze was a mixture of emotions he couldn't fully decipher. Anger, resignation, and something that might have been regret. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold mask of the professional she truly was. Hayes approached Thad, who stood frozen in the aftermath. You did well. Her confession and the information on that laptop will help us dismantle a significant portion of their network. What happens now? Thad asked, feeling hollowed out. Now, Hayes said, placing a firm hand on his shoulder, we prepare for the next phase. Kovac's employers won't take this lying down. They'll want revenge, and they'll want to tie up loose ends. Meaning me, Thad realized. And potentially anyone close to you, Hayes confirmed grimly, including your wife. The full weight of what he'd done, what he'd helped set in motion, crashed down on Thad. He'd lost his marriage through his own weakness. He'd been manipulated into compromising national security. And now, by helping capture Elise, he might have placed Viv in even greater danger. I need to warn her, he insisted. We already have. But there's something else, Hayes said, his expression grave. We believe there may be other operatives in your orbit, people close to you that we haven't identified yet. What are you saying? I'm saying trust no one, Hayes replied. Not your colleagues, not your friends. And if you want to protect your wife and unborn child, you need to stay away from them until this is over. As they exited the motel, rain began to fall again, washing away the last traces of the life Thad had once known. The Federal Detention Center in Portland loomed against the gray morning sky, a concrete fortress designed to contain society's most dangerous elements. Inside, in a sterile interrogation room, Elise Kovacs sat handcuffed to a metal table, her transformed appearance now stripped of disguises, revealing her true self for perhaps the first time. Gone was the warm, vivacious Laurel Reed. In her place sat a calculating operative, every movement measured and controlled. Across from her, Agent Hayes slid photographs across the table. Alexander Voss apprehended in Seattle last night, Victor Petrov arrested in Vancouver, Huang Wei detained in San Francisco. Each photo showed a different associate being taken into custody. Your network is collapsing, Ms. Kovacs. Her expression remained impassive, but Hayes noted the slight tightening around her eyes, the only indication that his words had any impact. Nothing to say? No denial that these are your colleagues? No claims of innocence? Elise finally spoke, her accent now distinctly Eastern European. I want immunity. Hayes leaned back. What makes you think you have anything worth that price? Because what you've uncovered is merely the outer layer, she replied. A shell protecting something far more valuable. I know the inner circle, the real power behind Chimera. Names, locations, active operations targeting critical infrastructure. And you'd betray them? Just like that? A cold smile touched her lips. Loyalty is a commodity, Agent Hayes. Like any commodity, it has a price. She leaned forward as far as her restraints would allow. My price is freedom and protection. A new identity, witness protection, and immunity from prosecution. That's a steep ask for someone who compromised national security. It's nothing compared to what's coming if you don't stop them. Her eyes held his, unflinching. They know Thaddeus helped you capture me. They'll come for him and anyone he cares about. In a safe house 30 miles outside Meriton, Thad stared at the drab walls of his temporary prison. 2 FBI agents stood guard outside, ostensibly for his protection, though it felt more like custody. 3 days had passed since Elise's arrest, 3 days of endless debriefings and questioning. His phone, a new secured device provided by the FBI, rang. Hayes' number. "We need you back in Portland," Hayes said without preamble. "Kovacs is talking, but we need verification on some of her claims. How soon can you be ready?" "I've been ready to leave this place since I got here," Thad replied bitterly. "What about Viv? Is she safe?" "She's under protection and she's been asked to come in as well. There are complications we need to discuss in person." The drive to Portland passed in tense silence, the agent accompanying him clearly under orders not to share information. The city sprawled grey and wet beneath an oppressive sky, mirroring Thad's mood perfectly. At the federal building, Hayes ushered him into a conference room where several agents were already assembled. To Thad's shock, Viv sat among them, her pregnant form somehow both vulnerable and formidable. Their eyes met briefly before she looked away, her expression unreadable. "Thank you both for coming," Hayes began, taking control of the meeting. "Ms. Kovacs has been cooperating, providing valuable intelligence on her organization. But her information has revealed a more immediate threat." He activated a screen showing surveillance photos of a man in his 40s, distinguished, with salt and pepper hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. "This is Julian Mercer, CEO of Mercer Tech. Their official business is telecommunications infrastructure, but according to Kovacs, that's a front for one of the most sophisticated cyber espionage operations in the private sector." Thad frowned. "I know Mercer Tech. They're a major player in the industry. Government contracts, military applications. The perfect cover," Hayes interrupted. "Kovacs claims Mercer recruited her personally 5 years ago for an operation targeting the Pacific Northwest Tech Corridor. Her assignment was to establish deep cover, integrate into the community, and identify vulnerable assets with access to classified information." "Assets like my husband," Viv said, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath it. "Yes," Hayes confirmed, but according to Kovacs, Thaddeus wasn't the only target in Meriton, just the most successful one. The implication hung heavy in the air. Thad looked at Viv, who now stared directly at him, her eyes filled with questions he couldn't answer. "What does this have to do with us now?" Thad asked. "You've got Kovacs, she's giving you information, why do you need us?" Hayes exchanged glances with his colleagues before continuing. "Because Mercer knows we have her, and he knows she's talking. According to our sources, he's dispatched a cleanup team. Their job is to eliminate loose ends, including both of you." Viv's hand moved protectively to her belly, a gesture that broke Thad's heart anew. "You want to use us as bait," she said, surprising everyone with her perception. "Draw them out so you can catch them." Hayes had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We want to offer you a chance to end this threat permanently. With your cooperation, we can set a trap that would not only catch Mercer's team, but provide evidence to bring down Mercer Tech itself." "And if we refuse," Thad demanded, "then we keep you in protective custody until the threat passes." "But I won't lie, that could be months, even years. These people are patient and resourceful." Viv's voice cut through the tension. "I'm due in 4 weeks. I won't bring my child into the world while hiding from assassins." She straightened, decision made. "I'll help, but on my terms. I want this over before my son is born." Thad stared at her in disbelief. "Viv, you can't seriously be considering this. It's too dangerous." Her eyes flashed with anger. "Don't you dare tell me what risks I should take, Thaddeus. You lost that right when you slept with my best friend." The room fell into uncomfortable silence. Eventually, Hayes cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss the details separately." In a private office, Viv faced Agent Rodriguez, who had become her primary contact with the FBI. "You understand what we're asking?" Rodriguez confirmed. "It would mean temporarily returning to Meriton, to your home, making it appear that you've reconciled with your husband, at least publicly." "I understand perfectly," Viv replied. "You want to use our broken marriage as theater to lure killers into the open." Rodriguez didn't deny it. "We believe Mercer's team will monitor you both before making a move. They'll want to confirm that you're potential liabilities, that you know enough about Kovacs' operation to be dangerous to them. And how exactly do we convince them of that? By acting as though you're piecing things together, having visible arguments in public, researching Kovats and Mercer tech on your devices, the appearance of a couple uncovering a conspiracy. Viv laughed bitterly. The irony isn't lost on me. I have to pretend to forgive the husband who betrayed me so that professional killers will try to murder us both. Rodriguez's expression softened. For what it's worth, I don't think your husband's betrayal was entirely his fault. Kovac is trained in manipulation techniques that would break most people. That doesn't absolve him, Viv insisted. He made choices that destroyed our family before it even had a chance to begin. No, it doesn't absolve him, Rodriguez agreed, but understanding the context might help you work together long enough to ensure your safety and your child's future. Viv turned to the window, watching rain streak the glass. 4 weeks until my due date. I want your word that this will be over by then, one way or another. In the adjoining room, Thad received similar instructions from Hayes, though with considerably less sympathy. You're lucky we're offering you this option instead of prosecution, Hayes reminded him. The evidence against you is circumstantial, but a zealous prosecutor could still make a case for negligence with classified materials. I'm well aware of my situation, Thad replied coldly. What exactly do you need us to do? Return to Meriton. Resume your normal lives as much as possible. We'll establish a visible security presence, then gradually withdraw it to create the impression that we've moved on to more substantial targets. Making us look vulnerable, Thad concluded. And Vivian, she's 7 months pregnant. How can you justify putting her at risk? Hayes's expression hardened. This was her choice, Sinclair. She seems considerably more determined to resolve this situation than you are. The accusation stung because it contained truth. Since Elise's arrest, Thad had been passive, allowing the FBI to direct his actions, wallowing in self-pity and regret, rather than taking control. When do we start? He asked, straightening with renewed resolve. Tomorrow. We'll have teams in place, surveillance on your property and in town. But remember, for this to work, it has to look authentic. Your reconciliation with your wife needs to be believable. Thad laughed humorlessly. That will be the hardest part of this entire operation. The drive back to Meriton passed in uncomfortable silence. Viv stared out the passenger window of the FBI vehicle, while Thad sat as far from her as the back seat would allow. Armed agents occupied the front seats, a physical reminder of the danger surrounding them. As they crossed the town limits, Viv finally spoke. We need to establish ground rules. Thad turned to her, grateful for any communication. Of course, whatever you need. This isn't about what I need, she corrected sharply. It's about what will keep us alive and end this nightmare quickly. First, we maintain separate sleeping arrangements. You'll take the guest room. Agreed. Second, our public reconciliation doesn't extend to private intimacy of any kind. We act like a couple working through difficulties outside the house, but inside, we're essentially roommates. Each word was a dagger, but Thad nodded. I understand. Third, when this is over, regardless of the outcome, we proceed with divorce. I've already contacted an attorney. The finality in her voice left no room for objection. If that's what you want. It's not about what I want, Viv said, her voice cracking slightly. It's about what's possible. Trust, once broken, can't be repaired. Not completely. There will always be cracks, always be doubts. I won't live that way, and I won't raise our son in that environment. They pulled into the driveway of their home, the Victorian house on the cliff that had once represented their future together. Now it felt like a stage set for their final act as a couple. I never meant to hurt you, Thad said quietly as the agents checked the property. Viv turned to him, really looking at him for the first time in days. That's the problem, Thad. You never meant anything. You just allowed things to happen. You were passive in your betrayal, just as you've been passive in everything else. She opened her door. That ends now. We both need to be active participants in what comes next if we want to survive. The following days established their new routine. FBI agents disguised as private security maintained a visible presence around their home. Thad and Viv ventured into town together, shopping at local stores, having tense conversations in cafes where they could be observed. Thad returned to limited remote work, carefully monitored by the FBI's cyber team. In private, they maintained a careful distance. Viv spent hours in the nursery, preparing for a future Thad increasingly feared he wouldn't be part of. He worked from his office, the scene of his betrayal now transformed into a command center for their protection. On the fourth night, as Thad prepared dinner, one of their few shared activities, Viv entered the kitchen with a troubled expression. "Someone's been following me," she said without preamble. "A woman, I've seen her 3 times now, outside the grocery store, near the school, and today at my doctor's appointment." Thad immediately activated the secure line to Hayes. Within an hour, the FBI had identified the woman as Sophia Reyes, known associate of Mercer's security team. "This is good," Hayes told them during an emergency briefing. "It means they're still in the intelligence gathering phase. They're trying to determine what you know, what threat you pose." "How do we accelerate things?" Viv asked, rubbing her lower back, discomfort evident. "I don't have the luxury of time." Hayes considered briefly. "We need to force their hand. Make them believe you've discovered something critical about their operation." "Like what?" Thad asked. "Like proof that Mercer Tech's entire business model is a front for stealing and selling classified technology," came a new voice from the doorway. Elise Kovacs entered, flanked by 2 agents, her hands cuffed before her. She looked nothing like either Laurel or the woman from the motel. Her hair was its natural auburn, her face bare of makeup, her prison jumpsuit replacing the carefully curated wardrobe she'd once used as armor. Viv recoiled visibly. "What is she doing here?" "Ms. Kovacs has been cooperative," Hayes explained. "She's agreed to help with this operation in exchange for consideration in her sentencing." "So you can't be serious," Thad protested. "After everything she's done?" Elise met his gaze without flinching. "Everything I've done includes providing information that's keeping you both alive right now. Mercer doesn't send his cleanup team unless he's absolutely certain you're a threat. I know how to make him certain." "And why would you help us?" Viv demanded. "What could you possibly gain?" "Survival," Elise answered simply. "Mercer won't stop with you two. I'm on his list as well. The difference is, I know exactly what he's capable of." She turned to Hayes. "Show them." Hayes hesitated before activating a tablet. The screen displayed crime scene photos, brutal, efficient executions of men and women in various locations around the world. "These are former Chimera operatives who were deemed liabilities," Hayes explained. "Mercer's cleanup team is thorough and merciless. And now they're coming for us," Viv whispered. "Yes," Elise confirmed, "but we can use that. Together." The word hung in the air. Together. A cruel echo of the friendship and intimacy that had once existed between them all. "I won't work with her," Viv stated flatly. "Find another way." Hayes sighed. "There isn't one. Not in the time frame you've demanded. Ms. Kovacs knows Mercer's methods better than anyone. She can help make this convincing." Thad watched the conflict play across Viv's face. Anger, fear, determination. Finally, she addressed Elise directly. "Why did you do it? Not the espionage. I understand that was your job. But why pretend to be my friend for 5 years? Why become so embedded in my life?" Elise's composure cracked just slightly. "Deep cover requires authentic relationships. The best lies contain elements of truth." "That's not an answer," Viv pressed. "It's the only one I have," Elise replied. "Except perhaps that it was easier to be Laurel Reed, your friend, than Elise Kovacs, a woman who'd lost everything that made her human. Sometimes I forgot who I really was." "How convenient for you," Viv said bitterly. "Unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of forgetting who you really are." Hayes intervened before tensions escalated further. "The plan is simple. Using Ms. Kovacs' knowledge, we'll plant evidence suggesting you've discovered Mercer Tech's true operations. Something compelling enough to force their hand, but not so obvious it looks like a trap." "What kind of evidence?" Thad asked. "Financial records," Elise supplied, "linking Mercer Tech subsidiaries to shell companies that purchased stolen technology. I know which accounts to target, which transactions will raise red flags. Once they believe you have this information," Hayes continued, "they'll move quickly. We'll be ready." "And then what?" Viv demanded. "Best case scenario, you catch Mercer's team, but he'll still be out there, still a threat to us." "Not necessarily," Elise interjected. "Mercer is cautious, but he's also arrogant. If he believes you have evidence that could destroy him, he might oversee the operation personally. He's done it before." The revelation shifted the atmosphere in the room. Hayes exchanged glances with his team. "Is that true? Would he expose himself that way? For a threat of this magnitude?" "Possibly," Elise confirmed, "especially if he believes I've revealed everything about his operation. His ego wouldn't allow subordinates to clean up a mess this significant." "Then we have a new objective," Hayes decided. Not just the cleanup team, but Mercer himself. Viv placed a protective hand on her belly. And once it's done, once he's caught, what guarantee do we have that this ends with him? None, Elise admitted. Chimera is a hydra. Cut off one head, another grows back. But without Mercer's connections and influence, they'll be significantly weakened. You'd have time, years possibly, before any remnants reorganized. Years is better than nothing, Thad said quietly. Viv studied him, then Elise, then Hayes. Finally, she nodded. I want this over. Tell me what I need to do. Over the next 48 hours, an elaborate deception took shape. Using Elise's knowledge and the FBI's resources, they created a digital trail suggesting Thad had discovered damning evidence while researching his wife's former friend. Encrypted communications were planted, financial records doctored to appear as though they'd been accessed. Throughout the process, Viv maintained her distance from both Thad and Elise, speaking only when necessary for the operation. The tension in the house was palpable, 3 people bound by betrayal and fear rather than trust. On the third night, as a storm battered the Oregon coast, Thad found Viv in the nursery, arranging tiny clothes in the dresser they'd purchased months earlier, in what felt like another lifetime. Hayes thinks they'll make their move soon, he said from the doorway, not entering her space uninvited. Possibly tomorrow night. Viv nodded, not looking up from her task. Good. The sooner this ends, the better. Viv, he hesitated, struggling to find words adequate for the magnitude of his regret. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know how sorry I am. Not just for the affair, but for everything. For being weak when you needed me to be strong. For letting you down when you trusted me most. She finally turned to face him, her expression a complex mixture of anger, grief, and something else. Perhaps understanding, though not forgiveness. You want absolution, she observed. I can't give you that, Thad. Not now, maybe not ever. I don't expect absolution. I just want you to know that I see now what I did, what I lost, who I failed to be. Viv sighed, suddenly looking exhausted beyond her years. The truth is, I've been asking myself if there were signs I missed, red flags I ignored, times when I could have seen what was happening between you and Laurel, Elise, whatever her name is. There's nothing you could have done, Thad insisted. This isn't on you. I know that intellectually, but emotionally. She shook her head. I trusted both of you implicitly. I never questioned your late nights or her sudden interest in your work. I handed you both the weapons you used to betray me. That's what trust is supposed to be, Viv. Vulnerability without fear. You did nothing wrong by believing in us. Didn't I, though? Her voice hardened. In literature, we study how characters make choices that seal their fates. I chose to be trusting to the point of blindness. I chose to ignore subtle changes in our dynamics. Those were my choices, and I'm living with their consequences. A crash of thunder punctuated her words. In the silence that followed, Thad realized something fundamental had shifted in Viv during these weeks of crisis. The woman before him was harder, more cautious, more self-reliant than the one he'd married. Whatever happens tomorrow, she continued, whether we survive this or not, I won't make those same choices again. I won't give anyone that kind of power over me or my son. The depth of damage he'd caused struck Thad with fresh clarity. He'd not only betrayed her trust, but fundamentally altered how she would approach relationships for the rest of her life. I understand, he said quietly, and I'll respect whatever boundaries you set after this is over. As he turned to leave, Viv called after him, Thad, despite everything, I hope we both make it through tomorrow. Our son deserves to know his father, even if his parents can't be together. It was the closest thing to forgiveness she could offer, and Thad recognized it as the precious gift it was. Neither of them noticed the small red dot of a laser sight, briefly illuminating the wall behind them, visible through the window for just an instant before disappearing into the storm-tossed night. Downstairs in the kitchen, Elise sat with Hayes reviewing final preparations. She paused suddenly, head tilted as though listening for something. They're already here, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. They've been watching us for hours. Hayes reached for his communications device, but Elise's hand shot out, stopping him. Don't alert your team yet. This changes everything. What are you talking about? Her eyes, cold and professional once more, met his. Julian Mercer is here. Now I can feel it. That's not possible. Our perimeter is secure. You don't know him like I do, Elise insisted. "He's been 2 steps ahead from the beginning." At that moment, all the lights in the house went out, plunging them into darkness as the storm raged outside. "What's happening?" Viv's voice called from upstairs. Elise's whisper carried a note of dread that sent ice through everyone who heard it. "This isn't a surveillance operation anymore. The cleanup has already begun." The plan had failed. The trap had become a killing ground, and somewhere in the darkness surrounding them, Julian Mercer waited to tie up his loose ends. Darkness enveloped the Victorian house as the storm's fury intensified. Emergency lights activated in strategic locations, part of the FBI's preparations, casting eerie blue shadows across the walls. In the kitchen, Hayes drew his weapon, immediately switching to tactical mode. "Sinclair, get your wife to the panic room," he ordered through his comm device. Thad raced upstairs, finding Viv already moving toward the hallway. Together, they hurried to the master bedroom, where the FBI had installed a reinforced closet with communications equipment, supplies, and a panic button that would summon additional teams. "Status report," Hayes demanded into his radio as he and Elise moved toward the rear of the house. Static answered him. Then a chillingly calm voice responded, not from his team, but from the house's speaker system. "I'm afraid your teams are temporarily indisposed, Agent Hayes." Elise froze, her face draining of color. "Mercer," she whispered. Outside, gunfire erupted, sharp and precise. The sounds of combat were quickly swallowed by thunderclaps, nature providing cover for the violence unfolding around the property. "Your perimeter has been breached," Mercer's voice continued. "Quite easily, I might add. You've made a critical error relying on Ms. Kovac's assessment of my methods. She always did underestimate me." Upstairs, Thad sealed the panic room door, securing Viv inside. "Stay here," he instructed. "No matter what you hear, don't open this door until Hayes or Rodriguez gives the all clear." Viv grabbed his arm before he could leave. "Don't play hero, Thad. Our son needs his father alive." Their eyes met in understanding before Thad closed the door, locking it from the outside. He hurried back downstairs, grabbing the firearm Hayes had provided him during their training sessions. The house had become a battlefield. Through windows, Thad glimpsed shadowy figures engaged in combat across the property. The FBI's presence, while compromised, was fighting back hard. In the kitchen, he found Hayes and Elise crouched behind counters, weapons drawn. "It's a full tactical team," Hayes updated him grimly. "Professional military contractors. They've cut communications, but our backup protocols should bring additional forces within 15 minutes. "We don't have 15 minutes, Elise countered, her expression deadly serious. "Mercer never leaves loose ends. He'll have contingencies for your contingencies." "What do we do?" Thad asked, feeling woefully unprepared despite days of preparation. "We need to get to your car," Elise said, surprising both men. "The one in the garage." "Why?" "Because I placed something inside it yesterday. Something that will give us leverage." Hayes turned to her suspiciously. "What did you do, Kovac?" A crash from the front of the house interrupted them. The front door splintered as tactical charges detonated against the locks. Masked figures poured in, weapons raised. "Go!" Hayes shouted, laying down covering fire, while Thad and Elise sprinted toward the garage access door. They made it through moments before bullets riddled the kitchen. In the garage, Elise rushed to Thad's SUV, reaching underneath the passenger seat to extract a small metal case. "What is that?" Thad demanded. "Insurance," she replied, her expression grim. "And our only chance to get out of this alive." A side door to the garage burst open. Thad raised his weapon but hesitated upon seeing Agent Rodriguez, bleeding from a scalp wound but still moving with purpose. "Hayes is holding them off, but not for long," she reported. "Where's Vivian?" "Panic room upstairs," Thad answered. Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Stay here. I'll get her." As she disappeared back into the house, Elise turned to Thad, her eyes calculating. "We need to move now." "I'm not leaving without Viv," he insisted. "You don't understand," Elise countered urgently. "Mercer isn't after your wife. She's not the threat. You are. You're the one who accessed classified material, who could testify about the breach." A terrible realization dawned on Thad. "You're saying they'll kill me and Hayes, but might leave Viv alone?" "If she doesn't get in the way, yes." Thad made a split-second decision that would change everything. "Then I need to draw them away from the house, away from her." Without waiting for a response, he grabbed the case from Elise and slipped out through the garage's rear exit. The storm provided cover, as he sprinted toward the cliffs behind the property, away from both the house and the FBI's defensive positions. "Thad, wait!" Elise called after him, but her voice was swallowed by thunder. Inside the panic room, Viv monitored the property through security feeds, witnessing the chaos unfolding around her home. She watched Thad run from the garage toward the cliffs, clutching something to his chest. Moments later, a team of armed men followed his path. The panic button pulsed red beneath her fingers. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? A sharp contraction seized her abdomen, the third in the past hour. "Not now," she pleaded silently. "Not like this." When the panic room door rattled, Viv grabbed the weapon Hayes had insisted she keep for emergency defense. The door swung open to reveal Agent Rodriguez, bloodied but determined. "We need to evacuate now," Rodriguez stated. "FBI tactical teams are inbound, but this position is compromised." "Thad," Viv managed. "He's heading toward the cliffs. They're following him." Rodriguez's expression hardened. "He's drawing them away from you. Smart, but dangerous." Another contraction gripped Viv, stronger than before. She failed to hide her grimace. "You're in labor," Rodriguez observed, not asking. "Early stages," Viv confirmed, "but getting worse." "Change of plans," Rodriguez decided. "We're getting you to a hospital. Now." On the cliff path, rain lashed Thad's face as he navigated the treacherous terrain. Wind howled around him, nearly drowning out the sounds of pursuit. The metal case Elise had hidden seemed to grow heavier with each step. Whatever it contained, Mercer's team wanted it badly enough to focus their attention on him, rather than the house. He reached the cliff edge, where a narrow trail zigzagged down to a small, rocky beach. The ocean churned violently below, waves crashing against the shore with thunderous force. There was nowhere left to run. "Mr. Sinclair," called a cultured voice behind him. Thad turned slowly. A distinguished man in his 50s stood several yards away, protected from the elements by an expensive raincoat. Despite the storm, he appeared perfectly composed, almost bored. Behind him stood 4 armed operatives, weapons trained on Thad. "Julian Mercer, I presume," Thad said, trying to project calm he didn't feel. "Indeed, I believe you have something of mine." Mercer extended his hand. "The case, please." "What's in it?" "Nothing that concerns you anymore. Though I must say, you've caused me considerable inconvenience for someone who stumbled into this situation through sheer weakness of character." The casual cruelty of the observation stung precisely because it contained truth. Thad had allowed himself to be manipulated, had chosen comfort and validation over loyalty. Yet here, facing death, he found clarity he'd been lacking for months. "You're right," he admitted, surprising Mercer. "I was weak. I betrayed the people I loved most. But I'm done being a pawn in other people's games." With sudden resolve, Thad held the case over the cliff edge. "Tell your men to stand down, or whatever's in here goes into the ocean." Mercer's pleasant expression didn't waver, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "That would be extremely unwise, Mr. Sinclair." "Probably," Thad agreed, "but I'm fresh out of wise options." A tense standoff ensued, broken only by the sounds of the storm. Then, unexpectedly, Mercer smiled. "I understand now why Elise found you interesting. There's more backbone there than first appears." He gestured to his men, who lowered their weapons slightly. "Perhaps we can negotiate like civilized people. What do you want in exchange for the case?" "Guarantees," Thad replied immediately. "My wife and child remain untouched. Forever. The FBI agents you've engaged walk away. And this ends all of it." Mercer laughed, the sound unnervingly genuine. "You're in no position to make such demands, Mr. Sinclair." "Maybe not," came a new voice from behind Mercer. "But I am." Elise emerged from the darkness, a pistol trained on Mercer's back. She was soaked from the rain, her expression coldly professional. "Ah, Elise," Mercer acknowledged without turning. "I was wondering when you'd make your appearance. Always one for dramatic timing. Tell your men to drop their weapons," she ordered, "or I put a bullet in your spine. They would kill you before I hit the ground." "Maybe," she conceded, "but you'd still be dead." For the first time, uncertainty crossed Mercer's features. He raised a hand, signaling his men to lower their weapons. "The loyalty of a traitor," he observed bitterly. "How touching." "This isn't about loyalty," Elise replied. "It's about survival. Something you taught me." Distant sirens wailed, barely audible over the storm. FBI reinforcements were approaching. Mercer's time was running out. "What's in the case?" Thad asked again. Elise answered without taking her eyes off Mercer. "Everything. Financial records, client lists, operational plans, the complete architecture of Chimera's global operations. I've been building this archive for years, my own insurance policy." Understanding dawned on Thad. "You never planned to honor your deal with the FBI, did you? This was your bargaining chip all along." "Self-preservation is a powerful motivator," she replied unapologetically. Mercer's face had lost its pleasant veneer, revealing the coldly calculating man beneath. "You always were my most promising operative, Elise, and my greatest disappointment." "Spare me the paternal disapproval," she retorted. "We both know you'd have killed me the moment I outlived my usefulness." The standoff was interrupted by the distant sound of helicopter rotors cutting through the storm. FBI tactical teams were closing in from air and ground. Mercer assessed the situation with clinical detachment. "It seems we're at an impasse." "No," Thad contradicted. "You're at the end of the line. The FBI has your location. Your team is outmanned and surrounded. It's over." A strange smile played across Mercer's lips. "Nothing is ever truly over, Mr. Sinclair. Merely postponed." With startling swiftness, he drew a concealed weapon. Multiple things happened simultaneously. Elise fired, hitting Mercer in the shoulder. One of Mercer's men lunged toward Thad, and the cliff edge, weakened by the storm, gave way beneath Thad's feet. The world tilted, then disappeared into chaos of rain, rock, and sea. Viv couldn't remember much of the frantic drive to Portland Memorial Hospital. Rodriguez had navigated flooded roads and fallen trees with grim determination, keeping up a steady stream of updates through secure channels. By the time they arrived at the emergency entrance, Viv's contractions were 5 minutes apart. "FBI," Rodriguez announced, flashing her badge to expedite Viv's admission. "This woman needs immediate medical attention and security protocols." The next hours passed in a blur of medical professionals, pain, and the terrifying absence of information about Thad's fate. Between contractions, Viv demanded updates that Rodriguez couldn't provide. "The operation is ongoing," was all she would say. "Focus on your baby now." 10 hours later, exhausted but determined, Viv delivered a healthy 7-pound boy. As the nurses cleaned and measured her son, Rodriguez entered the delivery room, her expression unreadable. "Tell me," Viv demanded, her voice hoarse from exertion. "Mercer's been taken into custody," Rodriguez reported. "Wounded, but alive. Most of his team have been neutralized or captured." "And Thad?" Viv pressed, clutching the hospital sheets. Rodriguez hesitated. "There was an incident on the cliffs. Part of the edge gave way during the confrontation. The world seemed to stop." "Is he dead?" "We don't know," Rodriguez admitted. "Search and rescue operations are hampered by the storm. The currents below those cliffs are treacherous." The nurse approached with Viv's swaddled son, placing him gently in her arms. Looking down at his tiny face, a perfect blend of herself and Thad, Viv felt a surge of emotions too complex to name. "He needs a name," the nurse prompted gently. Viv studied her son's features, memorizing each detail. "Ethan," she decided. "Ethan James Sinclair." It was the name she and Thad had chosen together, in happier times. Whatever had happened between them, whatever might happen still, this connection could never be severed. 3 weeks later, Viv sat in the living room of her sister's house, watching Ethan sleep in his bassinet. The investigation into Mercer's organization had dominated national news, revealing a sprawling network of corporate espionage and technology theft that had compromised governments and corporations worldwide. Julian Mercer faced multiple federal charges. His company had been dismantled, its assets frozen. Elise Kovac, who had sustained gunshot wounds during the cliffside confrontation, remained in federal custody, cooperating extensively in exchange for consideration in her eventual sentencing. And Thad remained missing, presumed dead. Search operations had recovered pieces of the metal case, but no body. The official theory was that the powerful currents had carried him out to sea. Viv wasn't sure what she felt anymore. Grief certainly, but complicated by the betrayal that had preceded it, relief that the danger had passed mixed with guilt over that relief, and beneath it all, a stubborn, irrational hope that refused to die. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Jennifer answered it, then appeared in the living room doorway, her expression troubled. "It's Agent Hayes," she announced. "He says it's important." Hayes entered, looking considerably more worn than when Viv had last seen him. He nodded respectfully at Ethan before addressing Viv directly. "We found something," he said without preamble. "Surveillance footage from a gas station in Northern California taken 3 days ago." He handed her a tablet displaying a grainy image. Though the quality was poor, the man captured in the frame was unmistakably Thad, thinner, with longer hair and several days' worth of beard, but alive. "He's alive," Viv whispered, emotions warring within her. "It appears so," Hayes confirmed. "But he hasn't contacted us or attempted to return home." "What does that mean?" "We're not entirely sure. The most likely explanation is that he believes his presence would continue to endanger you and your son." Viv studied the image, searching for clues in Thad's expression. Was he running from responsibility? From fatherhood? Or was he genuinely trying to protect them by staying away? "There's something else," Hayes continued. "When we processed Mercer, he made a strange comment. He said, 'Sinclair has no idea what he's carrying.' We assumed he was referring to the case Elise had prepared, but now I'm not so certain." "What do you think he meant?" "I don't know," Hayes admitted. "But it suggests there's more to this situation than we've uncovered. Information that even Kovacs might not be aware of." Viv looked down at her sleeping son, then back at the image of her missing husband. "What happens now?" "That depends partly on you," Hayes replied. "We can pursue him, bring him in for debriefing, or we can wait, see if he makes contact on his own terms." The decision weighed heavily. Despite everything, Thad was Ethan's father. He deserved to know his son, and Ethan deserved to know him. But the man in the grainy image looked haunted, hunted. Perhaps he needed time to find his way back. "Give him space," Viv decided finally. "But keep looking. I need to know he's safe, even if he's not ready to come home." Hayes nodded, understanding in his eyes. "For what it's worth, I believe he was trying to protect you at the end. Whatever his failings before, he showed courage when it mattered most." After Hayes left, Viv sat with her son, watching him sleep peacefully, unaware of the complicated world he'd been born into. She thought of Thad, somewhere on the run, believing himself alone. She thought of Elise, providing information that would dismantle the organization she'd served for years. Everyone was paying for their choices in different ways. 2 months later, Viv returned to their house in Meriton for the first time since the attack. The FBI had completed their investigation of the property, repairs had been made, and it was time to decide whether to sell or return. She walked through familiar rooms now filled with unfamiliar memories. The kitchen where Elise had betrayed her cover, the living room where FBI agents had planned their trap, the nursery never used, still waiting for a baby who now slept in a crib at Jennifer's house. In Thad's office, everything remained largely as it had been, his absence preserved like a museum exhibit. Viv sat at his desk, running her fingers over the smooth wood surface. Had he sat here plotting his escape, or had he truly fallen from the cliff, surviving by some miracle only to find himself adrift, unsure of his welcome back home? She opened drawers methodically, not entirely sure what she was looking for. In the bottom right drawer, beneath a false panel she hadn't known existed, she discovered a small leather-bound journal. Inside, in Thad's neat handwriting, were entries dating back several years. Most were mundane, work notes, ideas for home improvement projects, plans for their future. The entries from the past year told a different story. They chronicled his growing anxiety about fatherhood, his insecurity about his ability to protect and provide for their expanding family, and most painfully, the beginning of his vulnerability to Elise's manipulation. April 15th. Elle came by again while Viv was at school. She asks questions about my work that make me feel important, valued. Is it wrong that I look forward to these conversations? They're harmless, just professional interest. May 3rd. Conference call with the Pentagon team went well. Can't discuss details even here, but my role is expanding. Should mean a significant bonus this year. Haven't told Viv yet. Want it to be a surprise when it's official. Mentioned it to Elle though. She seemed genuinely impressed. June 10th. Viv is at a teaching conference in Portland. Elle brought dinner, wine. Talked for hours about everything. Work, fears about becoming a father, things I can't seem to discuss with Viv lately. She understands me in a way that's disconcerting. Nothing happened, but something feels like it's shifted between us. The entries continued, documenting his spiral into betrayal and subsequent guilt. The final entry was dated the morning of the FBI raid. I've destroyed everything that matters. If Viv and our child are the only good things I ever contributed to this world, I have to find a way to protect them now, even if they never forgive me, even if I never forgive myself. Viv closed the journal, tears streaming down her face. The raw honesty of Thad's private thoughts offered context, but not absolution. Yet there was something cathartic in seeing his struggle laid bare, in confirming that he had not betrayed her lightly or without consequence to himself. As she prepared to leave, her phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello," she answered cautiously. Silence, then a familiar voice. "Viv, it's me." Her heart stuttered. "Thad, I'm sorry for calling like this. I needed to know you're okay. You and the baby." "We're okay," she confirmed, emotions tangling her words. "It's a boy. Ethan James. He's perfect, Thad." A sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Ethan," he repeated, voice thick with emotion. "The name we chose." "Yes," she acknowledged. Then after a pause, "Where are you? The FBI found footage of you in California." "I can't say," he replied, tension evident. "It's not safe yet." "What does that mean?" "Mercer's in custody. His organization is dismantled." "Not all of it," Thad countered. "There are still people out there, dangerous people with access to dangerous information. I can't come back until I'm sure it's safe for you and Ethan." Viv's frustration mounted. "So you're what? On some vigilante mission? This isn't a movie, Thad. Your son needs his father. And he'll have me," Thad promised. "But alive and without bringing danger to your doorstep. There are things you don't know. Things I discovered in that case." "What things?" she demanded. "I can't explain over the phone, but I'm close to finishing this. Then I'll come back, and you can decide if there's any place for me in your lives." Before she could respond, he continued urgently. "I have to go. I'm moving locations daily, but Viv, I need you to be careful. Don't trust anyone connected to this case. Not completely. Not Hayes, not Rodriguez, not anyone." "What are you saying?" "There's another layer to all of this. Deeper than Mercer, deeper than Chimera. I'm tracking it down now." "Thad, you're scaring me." "I'm sorry," he said, genuine regret in his voice. "Just be vigilant. I'll contact you again when I can." The line went dead, leaving Viv with more questions than answers. She immediately called Hayes, reporting the communication. "We'll trace the call," Hayes assured her. "Though if he's being as cautious as it sounds, he's probably using burner phones." "He said something strange," Viv reported. "He warned me not to trust anyone involved in the investigation, including you." Hayes frowned. "That's concerning. He may be experiencing paranoia after the trauma he endured." "Oh, he might know something we don't," Viv countered. "Either way, we'll increase security around you and your son," Hayes promised. As a precaution. After ending the call, Viv sat in silence, processing. Thad was alive. He claimed to be working to protect them. But from what? Mercer was in custody. Elise was cooperating with authorities. The immediate danger had passed. Unless it hadn't. As night fell, Viv packed a few belongings from the house and prepared to return to her sisters. She wouldn't be moving back to Meriton. Not yet. Not until she understood what Thad had discovered, what had him still running 2 months after Mercer's capture. In the nursery, she paused to collect a stuffed bear they'd bought when first learning of her pregnancy. As she lifted it from the crib, something fell from inside it. A small flash drive taped to a note in Thad's handwriting. "If you find this, don't tell anyone. Don't view it on any networked device. The truth is bigger than all of us." The cold certainty of danger, thought long past, returned with crushing force. Whatever Thad had discovered, whatever had kept him away, had been hidden in their home all along, waiting for her to find it. Carefully concealing the drive, Viv left the house, unaware of the sedan parked 2 blocks away, its driver watching through binoculars as she loaded her car. "Target is leaving the residence," the observer reported into a secure phone. No indication she found anything of concern. "Maintain surveillance," ordered a distorted voice. "If Sinclair makes contact again, we move to phase 2. "And the child?" A pause, then, "Collateral damage is acceptable if necessary. The information cannot be allowed to surface." As Viv drove away from Meriton, the web of deception and danger that had ensnared her family continued to spread, its architects hidden in shadows far darker than she yet realized. The isolated cabin in the Cascade Mountains provided the perfect sanctuary. No internet, minimal electricity, and miles of forest separating it from the nearest neighbor. For 3 weeks, Viv had analyzed the contents of the flash drive using an old laptop with its wireless card physically removed. What she discovered left her sleepless, constantly checking the windows and jumping at every sound in the woods surrounding them. Ethan, now 4 months old, gurgled happily in his portable crib, unaware of the dangerous knowledge his mother now possessed. Viv studied his innocent face, drawing strength from his existence. Whatever happened next, she would protect him with every fiber of her being. The flash drive contained thousands of files, internal communications, financial records, operational plans, and most disturbingly, a list of high-level government officials who appeared to be working with Chimera. Not as unwitting targets, but as willing participants. The corruption extended into intelligence agencies, defense contractors, and even law enforcement, including the FBI task force investigating Mercer. The realization had hit Viv like a physical blow. Thad's warning suddenly made perfect sense. Trust no one involved in the case. Not Hayes, not Rodriguez, no one. A knock on the cabin door sent her heart racing. She quickly secured the laptop in a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, then grabbed the firearm she'd learned to use during her weeks in hiding. "Who is it?" she called, positioning herself between the door and Ethan. "Delivery," came an unfamiliar voice. Viv checked through a small viewing port. A uniformed courier stood outside, holding a package. She scanned the surrounding area for signs of threat before cautiously opening the door. "Vivian Sinclair," the courier confirmed. "Yes? Package for you, requires thumbprint confirmation." She hesitated before pressing her thumb to his electronic device. The courier handed her a small package, then departed without another word. Inside, she carefully examined the box before opening it. It contained a burner phone and a handwritten note. "Today, 3 p.m. One call only." At precisely 3 CUM, the phone rang. "I found the drive," Viv said immediately. "Thank God," Thad replied, relief evident in his voice. "Then you understand why I had to stay away. Hayes is compromised," she confirmed. "Rodriguez too. How did you figure it out?" "It was in the files Elise had collected. When the cliff collapsed, I managed to grab the case. Spent 2 days hiding in a coastal cave before I could safely move. By then I'd reviewed enough to realize we couldn't trust the FBI team. What's the endgame here, Thad? I can't keep Ethan in hiding forever. I've been gathering additional evidence, building a case to take to people I know aren't compromised. The Deputy Attorney General, for one. She's clean according to all the files, but I needed to make sure you and Ethan were safe first." Viv glanced at their son, now sleeping peacefully. "He looks like you. Has your eyes." A pause, filled with emotion. "I wish I could see him." "You can," Viv decided. "It's time we faced this together. Tell me where and when." "It's too dangerous," Thad protested. "More dangerous than me sitting here waiting for Hayes to figure out where I am. They're already suspicious. Last week, Rodriguez called asking why I hadn't brought Ethan for his checkup." Another pause, longer this time. 3 days from now, there's a diner in Rockport off Highway 20. Quiet, family-owned. I'll be there at noon." "We'll be there," Viv promised. After disconnecting, she began preparing. This meeting would change everything, not just for her and Thad, but potentially for the country itself if the evidence proved as damning as it appeared. In Portland, Elise Kovach sat across from her federal prosecutors, reviewing the testimony she would provide in the upcoming trial of Julian Mercer. Her cooperation had already resulted in dozens of arrests across 3 continents, dismantling major portions of Chimera's operational capacity. "Ms. Kovach, we need to discuss the Hayes situation," began the lead prosecutor. "What about it?" Elise asked cautiously. "Your previous statements indicated Agent Hayes might have connections to Chimera. We've investigated thoroughly and found no supporting evidence." Elise's expression remained neutral, though internally she calculated rapidly. "Perhaps I was mistaken. My information could be outdated." The prosecutor studied her carefully. "This isn't the first time your testimony has shifted regarding internal FBI connections. It raises questions about your credibility on other matters." "My credibility is fine," Elise countered smoothly. "But intelligence work isn't black and white. Networks evolve, allegiances shift. I'm giving you my best assessment based on the information I had access to." The meeting concluded with thinly veiled warnings about the consequences of providing false information. As guards escorted Elise back to her cell, She noticed a new security officer among them, one whose gaze met hers with subtle recognition. The message was clear. Someone was watching, evaluating whether she would maintain the expected narrative about Hayes and the FBI team. Someone powerful enough to place personnel within federal custody. In her cell that night, Elise made her decision. Self-preservation had guided her choices for decades, but now she faced a more complex calculation. If Hayes and others within the FBI were indeed compromised, as Thad's recovered files suggested, then her carefully negotiated immunity deal was worthless. She was simply being used to clean up Mercer's operation while leaving the deeper corruption intact. When they came for her the next morning, she was ready with new information to share, genuine this time, and potentially devastating to those who thought they controlled the narrative. The Rockport Diner sat just off the highway, its faded sign and gravel parking lot suggesting little to distinguish it from countless other roadside establishments. Viv arrived early, parking where she could observe all approaching vehicles while keeping Ethan's carrier close at hand. At precisely noon, a weathered pickup truck pulled into the lot. Thad emerged, nearly unrecognizable with his beard and longer hair. His eyes scanned the area with practiced caution before he spotted her car. Their reunion was awkward, emotional, and brief. Thad's eyes filled with tears at the sight of his son, while Viv struggled to reconcile the man before her with both the husband she'd loved and the one who had betrayed her. "He's perfect," Thad whispered, gently touching Ethan's tiny hand. "Has he been sleeping through the night?" "Some nights," Viv replied, the mundane parenting discussion feeling surreal amid their circumstances. "Thad, we don't have much time. What's the plan?" They secured a booth at the back of the nearly empty diner. Over coffee and untouched food, Thad outlined what he'd discovered and the steps he'd taken. "I've compiled everything. The files from Elise's case, additional evidence I've gathered, testimony from 2 Chimera operatives who wanted to make deals. It's all been encrypted and sent to multiple secure locations. If anything happens to me, it automatically releases to journalists, watchdog groups, and clean officials." "What about Hayes?" Viv asked. "How high does his involvement go?" "He's middle management at best. The real power is above him. Director Campbell himself is implicated in the files. They've been using Chimera to collect intelligence they couldn't legally obtain, while allowing the organization to profit from selling technological secrets to foreign entities. A shadow intelligence operation," Viv realized, "with plausible deniability." Exactly. Mercer was just a contractor, valuable but ultimately disposable. When he became a liability, they let him fall while preserving the core operation. Viv processed this information, its magnitude almost overwhelming. "So what's our next move? We can't just hide forever." "Tomorrow morning I'm meeting with Deputy Attorney General Catherine Wu. She's been building her own investigation into FBI corruption, unaware of the Chimera connection. With our evidence, she'll have enough to secure indictments against everyone involved." Hope flickered for the first time in months. "And then we can stop running?" "Then we can start rebuilding," Thad corrected gently. "Whatever that looks like." The moment of possibility was shattered by the sound of vehicles entering the parking lot, black SUVs with government plates. Through the diner windows, they watched armed agents deploy with tactical precision. "Hayes," Thad hissed, grabbing the backpack containing his evidence. "They must have tracked us." The diner's elderly proprietor approached their table. "You folks with the government?" she asked, nodding toward the parking lot. "No," Viv answered quickly. "Is there another way out?" The woman's eyes narrowed with suspicion, then softened at the sight of Ethan. "Storage room, back door leads to the woods. My grandson parks his truck behind there. Keys are in it." "Thank you," Thad said, reaching for his wallet. "Don't bother," she waved him off. "My boy served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Came back saying the biggest threat wasn't always the one you could see. I don't know what you're mixed up in, but those fellas out there don't look like they're bringing welcome baskets." They slipped through the kitchen as agents entered the front door. Within moments, they were speeding away in the grandson's pickup, taking back roads toward the mountains. "They'll track the truck," Viv pointed out, clutching Ethan, who had begun crying, disturbed by the sudden movement. "We just need distance," Thad replied, navigating the winding road with tense focus. "Enough time to reach Wu before Hayes can intervene." His phone rang. An unknown number. Thad hesitated before answering on speaker. "You're making a serious mistake, Sinclair." Hayes's voice filled the cab. "We're not the enemy here." "Save it," Thad replied coldly. We've seen the files. We know about Campbell, about the whole operation. It's over, Hayes. You don't understand what you're involving yourself in. This goes beyond national security. It's about global stability. The work we've done through Chimera has prevented disasters you can't imagine. By selling classified technology to the highest bidder, Viv interjected. By betraying your own country's interests. Hayes sighed, his tone shifting from authoritative to almost paternal. Mrs. St. Clair, I understand your perspective, but sometimes maintaining order requires operating in grey areas. The funds generated through those technology transfers finance operations Congress would never approve, operations that have saved countless lives. You don't get to justify treason by claiming it serves some greater good, Thad countered. It's not treason to recognize that traditional boundaries between nations are becoming obsolete in the information age, Hayes argued. Where have I heard that before? Oh, right, from Elise Kovacs. Seems you're reading from the same script. A new voice joined the call. Rodriguez. Vivian, please think about Ethan. He deserves to grow up in safety, not as a fugitive. We can protect you both if Thad turns himself in. This doesn't have to end badly. The manipulation was expertly applied, targeting Viv's deepest fears for her child. For a moment, doubt clouded her resolve, until she looked at Thad, at the determination in his eyes, the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect them and expose the truth. We'll take our chances, she replied firmly, ending the call. Thad reached across the seat, briefly squeezing her hand. Thank you for believing in me. I believe in the truth, Viv clarified, and I'm done being manipulated by people who claim to have my best interests at heart. They drove in tense silence, changing vehicles twice more through prearranged contacts Thad had established during his months in hiding. By nightfall, they had reached a small airfield where a private plane waited, their transport to Washington, D.C., and their meeting with Wu. As they prepared to board, Thad's phone buzzed with a text message from another unknown number. Sinclair, they've reached Wu. Meeting compromised. E.K. Elise, Thad murmured, showing Viv the message. She's warning us. Ed could be a trap, Viv pointed out, or she could be trying to help. Either way, we can't risk the meeting now. Their pilot approached, looking nervous. We need to move. I just got word that FBI vehicles are headed this way. With options disappearing rapidly, they boarded the small aircraft. As it taxied toward the runway, Thad made a decision. Change of plans, he informed the pilot. We need to go to New York instead. What's in New York? Viv asked as they began takeoff. Gloria Winters, Thad replied, senior editor at the National Tribune. If we can't reach Wu, we release everything to the press. The small plane climbed into the night sky, leaving the pursuing vehicles far below. For a brief moment, it seemed they might have escaped, until red warning lights began flashing across the instrument panel. Something's wrong with the fuel system, the pilot announced, his voice tight with concern. We're losing pressure rapidly. Can we make it to another airfield? Thad asked. Maybe. There's a regional airport about 30 miles east if we can maintain altitude that long. The plane began to shudder, its engines struggling to maintain power. Viv clutched Ethan tightly, praying silently as they descended faster than intended. Mayday, Mayday, the pilot broadcast. This is November 734 Lima experiencing fuel system failure, requesting emergency landing clearance at Eastwood Regional. Static answered him. Their communications were being jammed. They sabotaged the plane, Thad realized aloud. They're forcing us down on their terms. The pilot fought to maintain control as they lost altitude, seeking any suitable emergency landing site in the darkened landscape below. In the distance, lights from a small private airstrip offered their only hope. Hang on, the pilot warned, as they approached the improvised runway far too quickly. This is going to be rough. The landing was violent, a series of impacts that sent loose items flying through the cabin. The plane skidded to a stop just short of surrounding trees, its fuselage groaning with structural damage. Miraculously, no one was seriously injured. Ethan wailed in terror, but appeared unharmed in his secured carrier. The pilot, bleeding from a head wound, helped them exit through the emergency door. We need to move quickly, Thad urged, retrieving his backpack with the evidence. Whoever forced us down will be here soon. They had barely made it 50 yards from the wreckage when the sound of approaching helicopters confirmed his prediction. Powerful searchlights swept the area, pinning them in blinding white beams. Thaddeus and Vivian Sinclair, boomed an amplified voice from above. Remain where you are. You are considered armed and dangerous. Any attempt to flee will be met with appropriate force. Surrounded and outmatched, they had no choice but to surrender. Within minutes, they were separated. Viv and Ethan placed in one vehicle, Thad in another. His backpack with the evidence was confiscated, despite his vehement protests. "My son needs me," Viv insisted, as agents guided her toward a black SUV. "Where are you taking us?" "To a secure location for your protection, Mrs. Sinclair," replied a female agent whose face registered no emotion. "Your husband will be debriefed separately." As the vehicles prepared to depart, another helicopter approached, this one bearing different markings. It landed in a swirl of dust and debris, and from it emerged a figure Viv hadn't expected to see again. Elise Kovacs, accompanied by armed U.S. Marshals rather than FBI agents. "Stop," she called out, producing official documentation. "These individuals are protected witnesses in a federal investigation. By order of Deputy Attorney General Catherine Wu, they are to be remanded to my custody immediately." Confusion erupted among the FBI agents. Some reached for weapons, others made urgent radio calls. In the chaos, Elise approached Viv directly. "I know you have no reason to trust me," she said, her voice low and urgent. "But right now, I'm your only option. Hayes and his team will make you both disappear if they take you." "Why should I believe you?" Viv demanded, clutching Ethan protectively. "Because I've spent the last week providing Wu with evidence that corroborates everything Thad discovered. I'm trying to make amends, Vivian. If not for friendship, then for survival. None of us gets out of this alive unless we work together." Time seemed suspended as Viv weighed her limited options. The FBI agents were regrouping, clearly preparing to challenge Elise's authority. In seconds, the situation could devolve into armed confrontation. "What about Thad?" she asked finally. "My team is securing him now," Elise replied, nodding toward the other vehicle where marshals were already extracting a confused but unharmed Thad. Decision made, Viv allowed Elise to escort her and Ethan to the waiting helicopter. Thad joined them moments later, and they lifted off as FBI agents below argued furiously amongst themselves. "Wu received your evidence yesterday," Elise explained as they gained altitude. "She's been building a case in secret, selecting federal agents she knows aren't compromised. Hayes discovered the investigation this morning and moved to intercept you before you could connect with her." "And you?" Thad asked skeptically. "Suddenly you're on the side of justice." Elise's expression hardened. "I'm on the side of survival. When I realized Hayes was planning to eliminate all witnesses, including me, my priorities shifted. The immunity deal I negotiated becomes meaningless if I'm dead." "Where are we going now?" Viv asked, returning the conversation to immediate concerns. "A secure facility outside D.C. Wu has arranged for you to testify before a special prosecutor tomorrow morning. By this time tomorrow, Hayes, Campbell, and everyone connected to the unauthorized Chimera operations will be facing indictments." For the first time in months, hope seemed justified. Yet as Viv observed Elise, noting the calculated intelligence that had once been hidden behind Laurel Reed's warm facade, she couldn't shake the feeling that this woman was still playing a deeper game. The helicopter journey passed in tense silence, each occupant lost in their own thoughts. Ethan eventually dozed off, exhausted by the day's chaos. Thad repeatedly checked his phone, presumably confirming that his evidence remained secure in its multiple backup locations. As they approached Washington, Elise spoke again, her voice different, less professional, more personal. "For what it's worth, I am sorry, Vivian. Not for my mission. I believed in what I was doing, but for betraying your friendship. That was harder than I anticipated." "Save your apologies," Viv replied coldly. "I'm not interested in your feelings or regrets. The only reason I'm here is because right now, the enemies of my enemies are my temporary allies. Nothing more." Elise nodded, accepting the rejection. "Fair enough, but you should know that not everything was a lie. Some moments were genuine." "Which ones?" Viv asked, unable to resist the question that had haunted her for months. "When you planned my baby shower, when you helped choose nursery colors, when you slept with my husband. Tell me, Elise, which parts of systematically destroying my life were genuine for you?" The direct attack landed visibly, cracking Elise's professional veneer. For a moment, genuine remorse flashed across her features before she regained control. "You're right. What does it matter now?" She turned away, focusing on operational details with the pilot. Thad reached for Viv's hand, a tentative gesture of support. To both their surprise, she didn't pull away. "When this is over," he said quietly, "whatever you decide about us, about our future, I'll respect it. I just want you and Ethan to be safe." "I know," Viv replied. "But safety isn't my only priority anymore. Justice is too, and not just legal justice for Hayes and his co-conspirators." Her gaze drifted to Elise's back. "Personal justice as well." Something in her tone caused Thad to study her more closely. "What are you planning, Viv?" "You'll see," she answered enigmatically. "Everyone will." As the helicopter descended toward a secure government complex, Viv cradled her sleeping son, her expression resolute. The literature professor, who had once explored betrayal through fiction, now understood its reality intimately, and like the most compelling characters in her favorite novels, she had emerged transformed, no longer just a victim of others' machinations, but an architect of her own destiny. The game wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. They landed on a designated helipad where armored vehicles waited to transport them to separate debriefing locations. Before they parted, Viv pulled Thad aside for a private moment. "No matter what happens in the next 24 hours, she instructed, "follow my lead. Don't question. Don't hesitate. Can you do that?" Confused but trusting, Thad nodded. "Whatever you need." With that promise secured, Viv allowed herself to be escorted to the vehicle that would take her and Ethan to what should have been safety. Yet as she watched Elise confer with security personnel, noting the subtle shift in dynamics, how Elise seemed increasingly in control of the situation rather than merely participating in it, Viv's suspicions crystallized into certainty. This wasn't the end of their ordeal. It was merely the next phase of a more elaborate deception, and this time, Viv wasn't going to be the unwitting victim. The secure government facility outside Washington, D.C. resembled a corporate retreat more than a fortress, elegant stone buildings surrounded by manicured lawns and discreet security measures. Inside one of those buildings, Viv sat in a comfortable suite, watching Ethan sleep peacefully in a portable crib provided by their hosts. The accommodations were luxurious, the staff attentive, but she remained hyper-aware of the cameras monitoring her every move. A soft knock at the door announced Deputy Attorney General Catherine Wu, a formidable woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She entered without waiting for a response, accompanied by a younger aide who remained by the door. "Mrs. Sinclair, I'm Catherine Wu. I apologize for the circumstances of our meeting." "Where's my husband?" Viv asked directly. "Being debriefed in another building." "He's safe," Wu assured her. "I understand you've both been through an extraordinary ordeal." "That's one way to put it," Viv replied dryly. "When can I see him?" "Tomorrow, after your separate testimonies. We're keeping you apart to ensure independent accounts, standard procedure in high-stakes cases." Viv nodded, having anticipated this response. "And Elise Kovacs? What's her role here exactly?" Wu's expression remained neutral. "Ms. Kovacs has been cooperating extensively with our investigation. Her testimony corroborates the evidence your husband compiled, particularly regarding FBI Director Campbell's involvement." "How convenient," Viv observed. "And you trust her?" "We verify everything she provides," Wu countered. "But yes, her information has proven reliable." Viv studied the prosecutor carefully. Wu seemed genuine. Either she was not part of the deeper conspiracy, or she was an exceptional actress. Either way, Viv needed to proceed cautiously. "You should know," she began, "that I've taken precautions of my own. I've secured copies of all evidence my husband gathered, set to release automatically to multiple news outlets if anything happens to us." Wu raised an eyebrow, impressed rather than offended. "A prudent measure under the circumstances, but unnecessary now. By this time tomorrow, Hayes, Campbell, and their entire network will be in custody." "I hope you're right," Viv replied, "for all our sakes." After Wu departed, Viv extracted a small device from Ethan's diaper bag, a signal detector she'd purchased during their weeks in hiding. She swept the room methodically, locating 7 surveillance devices. As expected, the bathroom contained only one, mounted high above the shower. There, with water running to mask her movements, she removed a waterproof pouch hidden in her bra. Inside was a prepaid phone, which she used to send a single text message: "Position secured. Proceed with caution." The response came seconds later. Confirmed. Midnight. Viv destroyed the phone, flushing its disassembled components down the toilet. Returning to the main room, She projected the image of an exhausted mother caring for her infant, all while her mind raced through the complex steps of her plan. Hours later, as the facility quieted for the night, Viv placed Ethan in a baby carrier strapped to her chest and arranged pillows beneath the blankets of her bed to simulate sleeping forms. At precisely midnight, the surveillance cameras in her suite experienced a 3-minute technical glitch, long enough for her to exit through a service door temporarily unlocked from the outside. In a maintenance corridor, she met her unexpected accomplice, the elderly owner of the Rockport diner. Right on time, the woman noted approvingly, no longer appearing frail or unassuming. "This way." "Thank you, Margaret," Viv replied, following her through the labyrinthine passageways. "Any complications?" "None. My team has looped the security feeds in all relevant sections. We have 13 minutes to reach the rendezvous point." Margaret Thompson, retired CIA operations specialist with 30 years of field experience, had not revealed her true identity when she helped Viv and Thad escape the diner. That revelation had come later, when she contacted Viv through secure channels to offer assistance. "My grandson wasn't lying about serving in Afghanistan," she'd explained during their first clandestine meeting, "but I omitted my own service record. I've been watching Hayes and Campbell for years, gathering evidence of their off-books operations. When you and your husband stumbled into my diner with FBI on your tail, I recognized an opportunity." Now, moving silently through the government facility, Viv reflected on the unlikely alliance she'd formed. Margaret had provided resources, contacts, and tactical expertise. In return, Viv offered something equally valuable, a compelling narrative of betrayal that would finally expose the corruption Margaret had tracked for years. They reached an unmarked door where 2 more individuals waited, a middle-aged man in a security uniform and a younger woman in civilian clothes. "This is as far as I go," Margaret explained. "Jason will escort you to the East Wing. Samantha will take care of documentation." "What about Thad?" Viv asked anxiously. "Being moved as we speak. If all goes according to plan, you'll rendezvous at the helicopter in 20 minutes. Viv adjusted Ethan's carrier, ensuring he remained comfortable and quiet. "And our other package?" "Already secured," Margaret confirmed with a grim smile, though she wasn't happy about it. With a brief embrace, the women parted. Viv followed Jason through increasingly restricted areas of the facility, her heart pounding with each security checkpoint they bypassed using forged credentials. Finally, they reached a service entrance where a nondescript van waited, its engine running. Inside, to Viv's profound relief, sat Thad, looking confused but unharmed. "Viv," he exclaimed as she entered. "What's happening? These people said you sent them, but—" "We don't have time to explain everything now," she interrupted, settling beside him with Ethan. "Just know that Wu's operation is compromised. Elise is still playing both sides." "How can you be sure?" Thad asked, instinctively reaching for his son. "Because I found evidence that wasn't in your files," Viv explained, as the van accelerated away from the facility. "Wu isn't just working with Elise. She's been part of the Chimera Oversight Committee for years. This whole operation, bringing us in for protection, was designed to identify and secure all copies of the evidence while eliminating the 3 of us." "Jesus," Thad breathed. "But who are these people? How did you—" "Remember Margaret from the diner? Turns out she's former CIA, part of an internal watchdog group that's been building a case against Campbell's shadow operations for years. When she realized who we were, she reached out." The van navigated dark country roads, eventually arriving at a small private airfield where a helicopter waited. Approaching the aircraft, Viv finally allowed herself to feel the first stirrings of triumph as she spotted a figure seated inside, hands restrained and expression mutinous. Elise Kovacs. "Surprise," Viv said coldly as she boarded, securing Ethan's carrier to a special harness designed for the purpose. Elise glared at her former friend. "You have no idea what you're doing, Vivian. The people you're working with—" "Save it," Viv interrupted. "I know exactly who they are and what they want. Unlike you, they've been transparent about their motives and methods." "And you trust them?" Elise challenged. "After everything that's happened?" "I don't trust anyone completely anymore," Viv replied as the helicopter lifted off. "That's the gift you and Thad gave me, but I've verified their information independently. Which is more than I can say for anything you've ever told me." The flight was brief but tense, ending at another secure location, this one a converted warehouse in rural Virginia. Inside, A sophisticated command center had been established, staffed by what appeared to be former intelligence professionals. Margaret greeted them, now dressed in tactical gear that suited her far better than the diner owner's apron had. "Everything's in place. The data package is ready for release and our contacts at Justice are standing by." "What exactly is happening here?" Thad asked, looking around in bewilderment. "We're bypassing Wu and going straight to the Attorney General himself," Margaret explained, "with simultaneous releases to verified journalists at 7 major outlets. In 3 hours, when the morning news cycle begins, the entire Chimera operation, including its government handlers, will be exposed." "And our role?" Viv asked. "You'll provide recorded testimony, independently verifying the documentary evidence. Your personal story makes the technical details accessible to the public. Nothing creates outrage like a pregnant woman betrayed by government operatives." Throughout this exchange, Elise remained silent, her eyes calculating as she assessed the operation around her. Finally, she addressed Margaret directly. "Thompson, I should have recognized you at the diner. You've been ghost hunting through 3 administrations." "Not hunting ghosts," Margaret corrected. "Hunting traitors. There's a difference." "Patriotism is so subjective these days," Elise replied with a thin smile. "You call it treason. Others call it pragmatic flexibility in a changing world order." "Save the philosophical debate for your trial," Margaret retorted, "though I doubt you'll get the chance. People like you tend to have unfortunate accidents before reaching a witness stand." The chilling assessment hung in the air as Elise was escorted to a secure holding area. Once she was gone, Margaret turned to Viv and Thad. "You should prepare your statements, make them personal, emotional, but stick to facts you can verify. The technical evidence is compelling, but your human story is what will make the public care." In a small conference room, Viv finally had a moment alone with Thad. Ethan had fallen asleep again, oblivious to the momentous events unfolding around him. "How long have you been planning this?" Thad asked quietly, clearly still processing Viv's transformation from victim to orchestrator. "Since I found your flash drive," she admitted. "At first I was just trying to protect Ethan, but the more I learned, the more I realized that running and hiding would never be enough. We had to cut out the cancer completely." "You're remarkable," Thad said, genuine admiration in his voice. "I never would have managed this." "That's because you still believed in the system," Viv observed without malice. "Even after everything, you thought going through proper channels, Wu, the Justice Department, would work. I lost that faith the moment I walked in on you with Elise." The unvarnished reference to his betrayal made Thad flinch. "I deserve that, and a lifetime more of reminders." "This isn't about punishment, Thad. It's about clarity, seeing things and people as they truly are, not as we wish them to be." Before he could respond, Margaret returned with recording equipment. For the next hour, they provided detailed testimony, Thad focusing on the technical aspects of the security breaches and evidence trail, Viv narrating their personal journey from ideal family to targets of a government conspiracy. By dawn, everything was in place. Margaret's team had secured ironclad distribution channels for both the evidence and testimony. At precisely 7 a.m. Eastern Time, the story broke simultaneously across multiple platforms: television, print, digital. The Chimera conspiracy, as it was immediately dubbed, exploded into the national consciousness. Within hours, FBI teams loyal to the Attorney General arrested Hayes, Campbell, and dozens of others. Wu disappeared before she could be taken into custody, her abrupt flight essentially confirming her involvement. The president ordered a complete review of intelligence operations, with Margaret's group providing guidance to ensure the investigation remained untainted. 3 days later, Viv sat in the living room of a safe house provided by Margaret's organization, watching Ethan play on a colorful mat. The immediate danger had passed, but the aftermath of their revelations continued to ripple through Washington and beyond. Thad entered, looking exhausted, but relieved. "Just got word from Margaret. Mercer is talking, implicating everyone in sight in exchange for considerations. And they've located Wu in Canada. Extradition proceedings are already underway." "And Elise?" Viv asked, the question she'd been avoiding. "That's complicated," Thad replied, sitting beside her. "Officially, she's in federal custody awaiting multiple indictments. Unofficially, Margaret says she's negotiating some kind of limited immunity deal in exchange for exposing Chimera's international connections." "Of course she is," Viv said, unsurprised. She'll always find a way to survive. Margaret doesn't trust the arrangement, says Elise is too valuable to too many people to ever face real justice. Viv absorbed this information calmly. Then we'll have to ensure justice reaches her through other channels. What does that mean? Thad asked, concern evident in his voice. Instead of answering directly, Viv changed the subject. The Attorney General's office called. They're offering witness protection, new identities, relocation, the full package. What did you tell them? That I'd discuss it with you. It's not just my decision anymore. She gestured toward Ethan. It affects all of us. Thad's expression softened at this inclusion, the first hint that he might still have a place in their lives. Whatever you think is best, Viv. I'll support it. That's not enough, she replied firmly. I need you to have an opinion, to be active in these decisions. Passive acceptance is what led us here in the first place. The criticism was fair and Thad accepted it without defense. You're right. In that case, I think we should decline. Witness protection means forever looking over our shoulders, teaching Ethan to live in fear. With Chimera exposed and its government backers facing prosecution, the main threat is neutralized. There will always be remnants, Viv countered. People who lose power rarely surrender gracefully. True, but we have Margaret's network now, plus legitimate government protection. We're stronger together than in hiding. Viv considered his reasoning, appreciating both its logic and the assertiveness with which he presented it. Agreed. I'll inform them tomorrow. A comfortable silence settled between them. Not the easy intimacy of their marriage, but not the tense alienation of recent months either. Something new was forming, cautious but genuine. I've been thinking about us, Thad ventured finally, about what happens after this immediate crisis passes. And, Viv prompted, and I don't expect reconciliation. What I did was unforgivable, regardless of Elise's manipulation. But I hope we can find a way to co-parent Ethan effectively. I want to be in his life, Viv, not just occasionally, but consistently. She studied him, noting the changes these months had wrought. The entitled passivity was gone, replaced by a more grounded awareness of consequences and responsibilities. I think that's possible, she allowed, but it will take time, Thad. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. I know. I'm prepared for that journey, however long it takes. 2 weeks later, with the immediate investigation stabilized, they returned to Oregon, not to Meriton, with its painful memories, but to Portland, where Viv had accepted a teaching position at a private university. Thad found an apartment 15 minutes away, close enough for regular involvement with Ethan, but respecting the boundaries Viv had established. Their new routine developed gradually. Weekday dinners at Viv's place 3 times a week, weekend mornings when Thad would take Ethan to the park, a carefully choreographed dance of separate but connected lives centered around their son. As months passed, the rhythm became more natural. Thad proved reliable, consistent and respectful, never pushing for more than Viv was willing to give, but always showing up when expected. His interactions with Ethan revealed a patient, attentive father, far removed from the man who had once feared parenthood. On Ethan's first birthday, they hosted a small celebration at Viv's house. As their son gleefully smashed cake with chubby hands, Thad approached Viv with a carefully wrapped package. This isn't for Ethan, he explained, uncharacteristically nervous. It's for you. Inside was a leather-bound first edition of Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse, a book Viv had often cited as transformative in her academic career. I remember you saying your copy was lost in the move, Thad explained. I thought you might like to have it again. The thoughtfulness of the gift caught Viv off guard. Thank you. This is perfect, actually. I've been paying attention, he said simply. Learning to see you as you are, not as I assumed you were. The moment marked a subtle shift in their relationship. Not reconciliation, but perhaps the beginning of a new understanding. Later that evening, after Ethan was asleep and their guests had departed, Viv invited Thad to stay for coffee. The first time she'd extended such an invitation without their son as the explicit focus. I've been meaning to tell you, she began. I'm proud of the father you've become. Ethan is lucky to have you in his life. Thank you, Thad replied, clearly moved by her acknowledgement. That means more than you know. And I've been thinking about our arrangement, she continued carefully. It's working well for Ethan, but I wonder if we might consider some adjustments. What kind of adjustments? More flexibility, perhaps. Less rigid scheduling. Maybe occasionally approaching things as friends rather than estranged co-parents. The offer hung between them, not forgiveness exactly, but an opening toward something less adversarial, more collaborative. "I'd like that," Thad said simply, knowing better than to overreact to this tentative olive branch. As their personal lives slowly stabilized, the external situation continued to evolve. Mercer was sentenced to 20 years for espionage and related charges. Wu negotiated a plea deal implicating higher-level officials. Hayes received 15 years, while Campbell faced ongoing proceedings complicated by national security concerns. And Elise, as predicted, leveraged her unique position to secure a heavily restricted form of immunity. She would serve minimal prison time in exchange for dismantling Chimera's international apparatus. A deal that infuriated many, but reflected the pragmatic reality of intelligence operations. 6 months after Ethan's birthday, Viv received an unexpected letter, postmarked from a federal detention facility, but containing no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message. "Vivian, I hear you've rebuilt your life admirably. Good for you. I'm sorry our friendship ended as it did, though I suspect neither of us truly regrets the paths we've chosen. I'll be relocating soon. Reduced security, witness accommodation program, a fresh start of sorts. Perhaps one day, years from now, we might find ourselves in the same cafe by chance. I'd like to think we could share a civilized cup of coffee and acknowledge that life is rarely as simple as hero and villain. Until then, I wish you well. Truly." Viv read the letter twice before feeding it into the shredder. The audacity was pure Elise, assuming that time would eventually soften the betrayal, that some future reconciliation might be possible. It was precisely this confidence, this certainty that she could manipulate any situation to her advantage, that had made Elise both a brilliant operative and a terrible friend. That evening, when Thad arrived to spend time with Ethan, Viv shared the contents of the letter. "Unbelievable," he said, shaking his head. "Though I'm not surprised. She always believed she could rewrite any narrative to suit her purposes." "Indeed," Viv agreed, "which is why I've been working on something these past months." She retrieved her laptop, opening files Thad hadn't seen before. A manuscript, nearly complete, titled "Betrayal Encoded: How America's Intelligence Agencies Weaponized Trust." "You're writing a book?" he asked, surprised. "With Margaret's help. A complete account of what happened to us, but more importantly, a detailed expose of how operations like Chimera functioned. The technical aspects, yes, but primarily the human engineering. How they identified targets, exploited vulnerabilities, weaponized personal relationships. And Elise features prominently," Thad guessed, scanning the chapter titles. "As a case study in manipulation techniques, yes. Every methodology she used on us, documented, analyzed, and exposed. The ultimate immunity-proof punishment for someone like her. Professional annihilation," Thad observed. "She'll never be able to operate effectively again if this is published." "Exactly. The manuscript goes to publishers next month. Margaret has already arranged security for when it's released." Thad studied Viv with newfound respect. "You never stopped seeking justice, did you? Even after the immediate threat passed?" "Justice isn't a moment, it's a process," Viv replied. "Something I learned through all of this. Some wounds don't heal with a single verdict or sentence. Real healing comes from reclaiming your narrative, your agency." As they discussed the manuscript further, Ethan played contentedly nearby, occasionally bringing toys for their inspection, a child secure in the knowledge of being loved, unaware of the complex journey that had brought his parents to this point. Later, after Ethan was asleep and Thad prepared to leave, Viv made an unexpected suggestion. "Would you like to stay for dinner? I'm trying a new recipe. Nothing fancy, but there's plenty." The invitation represented another small step forward. Not forgiveness in its fullest sense, but acceptance of a new reality where their shared past informed, but did not dictate their present choices. "I'd like that very much," Thad replied, careful not to attach too much significance to the gesture. As they prepared the meal together, moving around the kitchen with the familiar rhythm of people who once shared a life, Viv found herself reflecting on the strange journey that had brought them here, from idyllic, expectant parents to targets of an international conspiracy, from betrayal's deepest wounds to the cautious rebuilding of something neither fully separate nor fully reconciled. "What are you thinking about?" Thad asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "How literature prepares us for life's complexities without ever truly capturing them," she replied. I've taught stories of betrayal for years, analyzed the patterns, discussed the psychological impacts, but living it, that's entirely different. Do you think there are stories that end like ours? Not with perfect resolution, but with whatever this is becoming. The most honest ones do, Viv said after consideration. The ones that acknowledge that healing isn't linear, that trust once broken is never quite the same, but that humans are remarkably adaptable creatures. We find new ways forward, even through the most difficult terrain. Their dinner extended into evening, conversation flowing more easily than it had in over a year. They discussed Ethan's development, their work, even tentative plans for his second birthday, the ordinary exchanges of parents sharing responsibility for a beloved child. When Thad finally left, there was a moment on the doorstep, brief but significant, where possibility hung between them. Not reconciliation exactly, but perhaps the foundation for something new, something built with eyes wide open, rather than blinded by idealized trust. "Good night, Viv," he said simply. "Good night, Thad," she replied, closing the door with a sense of calm resolution. Inside, she returned to her manuscript, adding final notes to the epilogue. The book would be published under a pseudonym, protection against potential retaliation, yes, but also a symbolic separation between Professor Vivian Montgomery, who had once lived in blissful ignorance, and the woman she had become. As she wrote, her phone chimed with a secure message from Margaret. Package relocated as anticipated. Surveillance in place. Will update weekly. Viv smiled, satisfied. Elise's reduced security accommodation wasn't quite what she believed it to be. Margaret's network would ensure that every move she made, every new identity she attempted to establish, would be monitored and, if necessary, exposed. Some might call it vindictive. Viv preferred to think of it as insurance, the same kind Elise herself had always maintained, a perpetual check on someone who had proven herself unworthy of trust. Closing her laptop, Viv moved to Ethan's room, watching her son sleep peacefully. In him, she saw hope for a future where betrayal was a lesson learned rather than a destiny fulfilled. Whatever happened with Thad, whatever new challenges emerged, she had found strength she never knew she possessed, not despite the betrayal, but because of it. The woman who had once trusted blindly now saw clearly. The professor who had taught literature now wrote her own story. The victim who had once been manipulated now held the strings. It wasn't the life she had planned, but it was the life she had claimed, hard-won, clear-eyed, and ultimately hers to define. As she prepared for bed, Viv glanced at the calendar where Ethan's pediatrician appointment was marked for the following week. Beside it, she had recently penciled in, "Coffee with Thad, 3 last p.m. Not a date, not quite friendship, but a step along whatever path they were creating, one cautious decision at a time. If this story touched your heart and you want to keep following inspiring and moving stories, be sure to check out our upcoming videos. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us and keep exploring stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will touch you as well, so click on it now and we'll see you there.